I was sitting alone at the bar nursing my whiskey when I spotted Amanda with her new husband Brad and his work buddies. They were laughing, celebrating some deal. Brad noticed me and smirked. That smirk turned into a full mockery session about my supposed unemployment. If only they knew I had secretly purchased CorpTech Solutions 3 months ago, the same company they all worked for. The same company where I would soon reveal myself as their boss. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe if you have ever been underestimated. Growing up in Seattle, I always had an entrepreneurial spirit. While other kids played video games, I built websites for local businesses. By 22, I had graduated with a computer science degree and was already working on my first serious startup. That is where I met Amanda. She was studying business administration, brilliant and ambitious. We connected instantly over late-night coffee and shared dreams. We married at 26, young and full of hope. Those first years were incredible. I founded MTech Solutions, a cybersecurity software company that grew rapidly. Amanda supported me completely, understanding the long hours and dedication it required. She handled much of our personal life while I built our financial future. We were a team, at least. That is what I thought. Around our 5th anniversary, things started changing. Amanda became increasingly frustrated with my work schedule. The arguments began small but grew more frequent. She wanted more time together, more vacations, more social events. I tried balancing better, but MTech was at a critical growth stage. Every decision I made then would affect hundreds of employees and millions in investment. The breaking point came during what should have been our 7th anniversary dinner. I was 40 minutes late because of an emergency server issue that threatened a major client. Amanda barely spoke during dinner, and when we got home, she told me she wanted a divorce. The pain was indescribable. I had been building our future while she had been building resentment. The divorce process was messy and draining. Amanda portrayed me as a neglectful workaholic, conveniently forgetting the lifestyle my work provided us. She walked away with a substantial settlement, and I threw myself even deeper into my company. 6 months later, I heard she was dating Brad Thompson, the marketing director at CorpTech Solutions, a mid-sized tech firm across town. A year after the divorce, I made the difficult decision to sell MTech. The company had become too associated with my failed marriage. The sale netted me $87 million after taxes. Instead of starting another company immediately, I decided to take a sabbatical, travel, breathe, rethink my priorities. During this time, I quietly began investing in various businesses. I preferred remaining a silent partner, providing capital and occasional guidance without day-to-day involvement. That approach changed when I learned CorpTech Solutions was struggling and looking for buyers. Initially, I was hesitant. Investing in the company where my ex-wife's new husband worked seemed complicated, but the business fundamentals were solid despite poor management. Their core products had potential, but leadership was failing. After thorough due diligence, I purchased CorpTech through my holding company, keeping my name off public documents. Only the board and my attorney knew my identity. I planned to improve the company culture and profitability while maintaining my anonymity, at least for a while. What I discovered in the first weeks of ownership troubled me. Employee satisfaction scores were abysmal. Turnover was high, especially in departments reporting to Brad and his inner circle of executives. Anonymous complaints described a toxic culture of favoritism, credit stealing, and bullying. Brad and his friends were the primary offenders, but they had somehow convinced the previous owners they were indispensable. I decided to observe before making any drastic changes. That evening at Sullivan's Steakhouse was supposed to be simple. I was meeting with potential investors for a new green energy startup. The restaurant was upscale, dimly lit with that perfect mix of privacy and atmosphere for business discussions. My investors had just left when I noticed the boisterous group being seated in the adjacent section. Amanda looked essentially the same, her blonde hair now shorter, wearing a black cocktail dress. Brad was beside her, his arm possessively around her waist. With them were 4 men in business attire, all carrying that distinctive CorpTech employee badge on lanyards tucked into their jacket pockets. They were celebrating something, ordering champagne, making toasts. I paid my bill and was preparing to leave quietly when Brad spotted me. His expression changed instantly from jovial to something darker. He whispered to the others and several heads turned my way. I nodded politely, hoping that would be the end of it. It was not. Brad excused himself from the group and approached my table. Up close, his expensive suit and carefully styled hair spoke of someone very concerned with appearances. He had the practiced smile of a career salesman. I stood up, hand extended professionally. We had met briefly during the last days of my marriage, but this was our first real interaction. I kept my voice even. I said it was nice to see him and I hoped they were doing well. That is when the first jab came. Brad said he was surprised to see me dining at such an expensive place. He had heard I was between opportunities these days. The implication was clear, the mocking tone unmistakable. I explained calmly that I had sold my company and was exploring new ventures. He raised an eyebrow and said, "Must be nice to be unemployed and living off your past success. When do you plan to do actual work again?" The question stung more than I wanted to admit. Before I could respond, he waved his friends over. They surrounded my table, 5 men in expensive suits versus me in my casual button-down and slacks. I suddenly felt underdressed and outnumbered. Brad introduced me to his colleagues. "This is Emilio," he said, "the genius startup guy who decided work was optional." He used air quotes around genius, drawing snickers from his friends. I recognized them from company files. Ryan Daniels, VP of Sales. Thomas Wright, Financial Controller. Jason Alvarez, Marketing Manager. Greg Peterson, Operations Director. All part of Brad's inner circle at CorpTech. All with similarly poor performance reviews and complaints against them. And none with any idea they were standing in front of their new owner. Amanda remained at the table, watching uncomfortably, but making no move to intervene. Our eyes met briefly and she looked away first. That hurt almost as much as the mockery that followed. Ryan asked if I was hiring a life coach to find my purpose. Thomas suggested I try applying at CorpTech, as they occasionally hired people without ambition for entry-level positions. Jason openly wondered how long my money would last with no income. Each comment was delivered with a smile that never reached their eyes. I maintained my composure, though inside I was seething. I thought of the employees at CorpTech whose careers these men had stunted, the innovations they had suppressed, the toxic culture they had created. And for what? To stroke their own egos. Brad delivered what he clearly thought was the killing blow. He said, "Some of us have to actually succeed every day, not just once before retiring to obscurity." Maybe Amanda made the right choice picking someone with ongoing ambition. That was the moment something shifted inside me. Not just anger, but resolve. These men were not just insulting me. They were emblematic of everything wrong with leadership at the company I now owned. Their behavior confirmed every complaint in the HR files. I smiled, paid my bill, and said I should be going. Brad smirked clearly, believing he had won our encounter. If only he knew what was coming. As I walked out, I heard Amanda admonishing Brad. She said that was unnecessary. His response floated across the restaurant. He said what the guy needed: a reality check. Not everyone gets to check out of real life like Emilio. I stepped into the cool night air, my mind already formulating a plan. The quarterly executive review was in 3 days. It would be the perfect setting for what needed to happen next. That night's sleep eluded me. The humiliation played on repeat in my mind, not just for myself, but for what it represented. How many employees had endured similar treatment from Brad and his cronies? The company culture report suddenly felt personal in a way they had not before. Around 3 in the morning, I called James Wilson, my business advisor, and the only other person who knew I owned CorpTech. I apologized for the hour, but explained what had happened. James had been skeptical about my anonymous ownership from the beginning. Now he agreed it was time for a change. We spent the next day reviewing every piece of data on Brad and his inner circle. Their departments consistently underperformed while they took credit for wins from other teams. Employee turnover in their divisions was nearly triple the industry average. Most damning were the exit interviews where departing employees specifically named Brad, Ryan, Thomas, Jason, or Greg as reasons for leaving. I also uncovered financial irregularities. Nothing illegal, but ethically questionable. Expense accounts used for personal meals classified as client meetings. Vendor contracts with suspicious kickback structures. Resources allocated based on favoritism rather than business needs. James advised caution. He said firing them immediately might seem like personal revenge. We needed to be methodical, professional. The quarterly review would provide the perfect context to address performance issues with documentation and witnesses. As owner, I had every right to attend and evaluate my executive team. I spent the next 2 days preparing meticulously. I studied current projects, financial projections, and organizational charts. I prepared a detailed presentation, highlighting the exact issues with each department under Brad and his friends. I also developed an immediate reorganization plan to stabilize the company after their departure. On the morning of the review, I arrived at CorpTech headquarters early. The CEO, Patricia Reynolds, was the only executive who knew my identity. She had been working with me behind the scenes, equally concerned about the company culture, but constrained by the previous ownership structure. We met briefly in her office before the meeting. Patricia warned me that Brad was planning to present inflated results for his department. She had tried addressing his performance issues previously, but had been undermined by his relationships with the former owners. She was relieved I was finally stepping in. The boardroom filled with department heads and executives. Brad and his 4 friends sat together on one side, confidence radiating from them. They had prepared a joint presentation taking credit for a recent minor uptick in sales that actually came from a product developed by a team none of them managed. Patricia opened the meeting and introduced me simply as a major investor, interested in operations. Brad and his friends paid little attention, scrolling through phones or quietly joking among themselves. Their disrespect was palpable. When Patricia announced that Brad's team would present first, they approached the front of the room with swagger. Brad opened PowerPoint slides full of misleading graphs and began his well-rehearsed speech about his innovative marketing strategies. The others chimed in with equally exaggerated claims about their contributions. 20 minutes into their presentation, I raised my hand. The simple gesture somehow silenced the room. Brad looked annoyed at the interruption. I stood and thanked them for their presentation. Then I introduced myself properly. I said, "My name is Emilio Reyes. 3 months ago, I acquired CorpTech Solutions. I am not just an investor. I am the owner of this company." The color drained from Brad's face. Ryan dropped his laser pointer. Thomas frantically began scanning through papers as if searching for warning signs they had missed. Jason and Greg exchanged panicked glances. I continued calmly, connecting my laptop to the projector. I displayed the actual performance metrics for each department. The real numbers told a very different story than their presentation. I showed the employee satisfaction scores, the turnover rates, the customer complaints specific to their leadership. For 30 minutes, I methodically presented evidence of their mismanagement, their bullying tactics, and their credit stealing. I included anonymous quotes from employees who feared retaliation. I showed comparative data from similar-sized companies to highlight just how poorly their departments performed. Throughout my presentation, Brad attempted to interrupt several times with excuses and deflections. Each time I calmly asked him to allow me to finish. The other executives in the room, many of whom had suffered under Brad's politics, watched with increasing interest. When I finished presenting the data, I moved to the consequences. I announced immediate termination for Brad, Ryan, Thomas, Jason, and Greg due to performance issues, ethics violations, and creation of a hostile work environment. I had security waiting to escort them to collect personal belongings, then off the premises. Their access to company systems had already been revoked. Brad finally found his voice. He sputtered about contracts and wrongful termination. I replied that our legal team had reviewed everything thoroughly. The documentation was overwhelming, and nothing about this was impulsive or without cause. The most satisfying moment came when Brad tried his final play. He said, "You are only doing this because of Amanda. This is personal." I looked him directly in the eyes. I said, "This has nothing to do with Amanda. This is about your performance and behavior. The fact that you mocked me at Sullivan simply meant I observed your character firsthand rather than just through reports. But the decision would have been the same either way." As security arrived, Brad looked at me with a mixture of shock and hatred. He said, "You will not get away with this. I have friends in this industry." I simply replied, "So do I, and I treat mine with respect." They were escorted out, 5 men who had built their careers on intimidation, suddenly powerless. The remaining executives sat in stunned silence. I used that moment to outline my vision for the company moving forward. Transparency, merit-based advancement, zero tolerance for bullying, investment in innovation, and employee development. By that afternoon, word had spread throughout the company. I visited different departments, introducing myself personally to as many employees as possible. The relief on many faces was immediate and gratifying. Several people shared stories of opportunities blocked by Brad or his friends, ideas stolen, credit misappropriated. That evening, Amanda texted me. She had heard what happened. Her message was brief. "I did not know who they really were at work. I am sorry for what Brad said to you." I did not reply immediately. Her apology seemed to be about Brad's behavior, not her own choices or actions during our marriage. I needed time to process everything before engaging with her again. The weeks following the terminations were intensely busy and deeply rewarding. I took an active role in reorganizing CorpTech, working closely with Patricia to identify talented employees who had been suppressed under the previous regime. We promoted Sarah Chen, a brilliant product developer whose innovations Brad had repeatedly claimed as his own. Her first act as new VP of Product Development was to greenlight 3 projects previously shelved for political reasons. All 3 would eventually become cornerstone offerings for the company. Marcus Johnson, a sales team member, repeatedly passed over for promotion despite outstanding performance, replaced Ryan as VP of Sales. His authentic approach with clients immediately improved relationships damaged by Ryan's aggressive tactics. The company culture transformed remarkably quickly once the toxic elements were removed. Employee satisfaction scores rose 20% in the first month. Productivity increased. People actually smiled in the hallways. 4 weeks after the terminations, I ran into Amanda at Westlake Coffee, a small cafe near the CorpTech offices. I had just finished a meeting with our new financial team and was grabbing coffee before heading back to headquarters. She was alone, staring into her latte with a distracted expression. She noticed me immediately and asked if she could join me. Against my better judgment, I agreed. She looked tired, the confident exterior somewhat diminished. Amanda told me she and Brad were having problems. After his firing, he had become bitter, drinking too much, blaming everyone but himself. She had discovered he had been lying about many aspects of his career and finances. The man she thought was confidently successful had been mostly smoke and mirrors. I listened without interrupting. When she finished, she reached across the table for my hand. I gently moved it away. She said she had made a mistake leaving our marriage. She suggested perhaps we could try again, now that I had found better work-life balance. Her words revealed she still did not understand what had happened between us. She saw my success as something that had taken me away from her, rather than something we could have built together. I told her I wished her well, but had moved forward with my life. I kept my tone kind but firm. This was not about revenge or holding grudges. It was about recognizing that some chapters are truly finished. As for Brad, I learned he was struggling to find comparable employment. His reputation had followed him not because I had blacklisted him, but because other executives from CorpTech had shared their experiences when contacted for references. Actions truly do have consequences. I had mixed feelings about this outcome. I took no pleasure in anyone's hardship, even Brad's. Yet there was a certain justice in him facing the results of his own behavior. I hoped he might eventually learn and grow from the experience, though that would be his choice. The most unexpected development came when Greg Peterson, one of Brad's former friends, reached out to me. Unlike the others, he seemed genuinely remorseful. He acknowledged his participation in the toxic culture and asked for a chance to apologize in person. We met for coffee, and his contrition seemed sincere. He explained how he had gotten caught up in Brad's influence, compromising his own values for acceptance and career advancement. It was not an excuse, he stressed, just context for mistakes he deeply regretted. I did not offer Greg his job back, but I did provide references for positions better suited to his skills at other companies. Sometimes people deserve second chances, just not necessarily in the same environment where they failed. 6 months later, CorpTech Solutions had transformed completely. Our stock value had increased 62%. Employee retention was at an all-time high. We had launched 2 innovative products developed by teams previously held back by Brad's management. My perspective on success had evolved through this experience. The satisfaction of the quarterly numbers paled compared to seeing employees thrive in a healthy environment. I established a mentorship program for young entrepreneurs, sharing lessons from both my successes and failures. I also found a healthier balance in my own life. 3 days a week I left the office by 5, regardless of what remained unfinished. I took up rock climbing, joined a recreational soccer league, and reconnected with friends neglected during my workaholic years. Through the soccer league, I met Diana, a pediatric surgeon with a wicked sense of humor and zero interest in corporate politics. Our relationship developed slowly, built on mutual respect and genuine interest in each other's passions. Unlike Amanda, she saw my ambition as a quality to be channeled, not changed. Unlike me with Amanda, I made sure Diana knew she was more important than any business success. Looking back at the night Brad mocked me at the restaurant, I realized something profound. Had he treated me respectfully, I might never have accelerated my involvement with CorpTech. His cruelty inadvertently created the circumstances of his own downfall, while opening the door to improvements that benefited hundreds of employees. The revenge that initially felt so sweet ultimately proved less satisfying than the positive changes that followed. The company was thriving not because I had settled a score, but because removing toxic leadership had unleashed the potential that was there all along. The most valuable lesson was not about justice or comeuppance. It was about understanding that true success comes from building others up, not tearing them down. Brad failed not because he lacked talent or opportunity, but because he built his success on the backs of others. I succeeded not by defeating him, but by creating an environment where everyone could contribute and be recognized. As I look toward the future, I carry this wisdom with me. External validation and material success are fleeting. Inner peace and positive impact endure. Whether in business or personal relationships, how we treat others ultimately determines not just their experience, but our own legacy. Have you ever experienced someone underestimating you only to later realize their mistake, or have you had to stand up to workplace bullies? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please hit the like button, subscribe to my channel for more real-life experiences, and share this video with someone who might need to hear that karma is real. Thank you for listening, and remember, true success is not just what you achieve, but how you achieve it.